Welcome back, everybody. These are the best films that were released in the year 1964. Let's check out all the thrillers, crime, drama, romance, comedy, horror, war, biography, everything. We're going to cover it all for the year 1964. All right. Let's see all the films that were giving us enjoyment in the year 1964 in theaters, movies, drive-ins, and cable TV in the 80s. Because there was no cable TV in the 70s, but there was cable TV in the 80s. And some of you have seen these movies in the 80s. All right, these are the best films that were released in 1964. Let's check them out. The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao. A mysterious circus comes to a western town bearing wonders and characters that entertain the inhabitants and teach valuable lessons, featuring Tony Randall, Barbara Eden, and Arthur O'Connell. A Global Affair. A bachelor employee at the United Nations building takes care of an abandoned baby. Bob Hope, Michelle Machir, and Elga Anderson. A Global Affair. A Tiger Walks. A tiger escapes from a circus truck as it passes by a small town and hides itself in the surrounding woods, featuring Brian Keith, Vera Miles, and Pamela Franklin. The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night. Over 2 typical days in the life of the Beatles, the boys struggle to keep themselves and Sir Paul McCartney's mischievous grandmother in check while preparing for a live TV performance. One of the greatest rock movies of all time. A House is Not a Home. Biopic of notorious New York City madman Polly Alder set during the Roaring Twenties, featuring Shelley Winters and Robert Taylor and Cesar Romero. They All Died Laughing. An English professor decides that there are too many useless people in the world and invents a gas that will kill them off. But first, they'll at least have a good laugh. Featuring Leo McKern, Janet Monroe, and Maxine Audley. The Americanization of Emily. An American naval officer's talent for living the good life in wartime is challenged when he falls in love and is sent on a dangerous mission. James Garner and Julie Andrews. Becket. King Henry II of England comes to terms with his affection for his close friend and confidant, Thomas Becket, who finds his true honor by observing God's divine will rather than the king's. Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole. Bedtime Story. 2 scam artists preying on women for their money clash in a Mediterranean hotspot. Marlon Brando and David Niven. Bedtime Story. The Big Parade of Comedy. A compilation of scenes from classic MGM comedies from the silent era up to 1948's A Southern Yankee. The Big Parade of Comedy is an all-star cast. Blood and Black Lace. A masked, shadowy killer brutally murders the models of a scandalous fashion house in Rome. Cameron Mitchell and Eva Bartok. Blood and Black Lace. Dead Ringer. The working-class twin sister of callous, wealthy woman impulsively murders her out of revenge and assumes her identity. Betty Davis, Carl Malden, and Peter Lawford. Dead Ringer. Diary of a Bachelor. A wealthy young woman about to marry a noted playboy comes across his diary, and as she reads it, she begins to discover that her intended husband isn't quite what he seems to be. Diary of a Bachelor. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. An unhinged American general orders a bombing attack on the Soviet Union, triggering a path to nuclear holocaust that a war room full of politicians and generals frantically tries to stop. Ensign Pulver. Life becomes harried after Ensign Pulver's prank. He and the captain are swept overboard during a storm ending upon a tropical island with a group of misfits. Ensign Pulver. Failsafe. A technical malfunction sends American planes to Moscow to deliver a nuclear attack. Can an all-out war be averted? Henry Fonda, Walter Matthau, and Fritz Weaver. Next up we have is Father Goose. During World War II, a man persuaded to live on an isolated island and spy aircraft, finds himself responsible for a teacher and several students, all female, Cary Grant and Leslie Caron. A Fistful of Dollars, spaghetti western. A wandering gunfighter plays two rival families against each other in a town torn apart by greed, pride, and revenge. Clint Eastwood. For those who think young, a wealthy young man tries to woo a university student, while her two uncles work to popularize a local club. Paul Lynde, Pamela Tippin, and James Darren. From Russia with Love. James Bond willingly falls into an assassination plot involving a naive Russian beauty in order to retrieve a Soviet encryption device that was stolen by the organization Spectre. From Russia with Love. Get yourself a college girl. A college co-ed tries to balance her time writing songs and dealing with her publisher, who tries to pursue her. Marianne Mobley and Joanne O'Brien. Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster. A detective protects a princess who prophesies Earth's destruction by a powerful alien dragon. Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster. Time of Indifference. A penniless countess falls in love with a cad, unaware that he is also involved on the side with her beautiful daughter. Time of Indifference. Goldfinger. While investigating a gold magnet smuggling, James Bond uncovers a plot to contaminate the Fort Knox Gold Reserve. Sean Connery and Gert Frobe. Good Neighbor Sam. To help his divorced neighbor claim a substantial inheritance, a family man poses as her husband. Featuring Jack Lemmon, Romy Schneider, and Dorothy Provin. Next up we have is Drama, History, and War, Guns at Patasi. Anachronic strict regimental sergeant major on a remote colonel African-American caught in a local coup d'etat must use his experience to defend those in his care. Hush, hush, sweet Charlotte. An aging reclusive Southern belle, plagued by horrifying family secret, descends into madness after the arrival of a lost relative. Hush, hush, sweet Charlotte. Kisses for My President. When the women of Americans join together on Election Day and elect a Leslie McLeod as the U.S. President, things get a little awkward. Fred McMurray and Polly Bergen. Kisses for My President. Kiss Me, Stupid. Jealous piano teacher Orville sends his beautiful wife Zelda away for the night while he tries to sell a song to famous nightclub singer Dino, who is stranded in town. Dean Martin, Kim Novak, and Ray Walton. The Last Man on Earth. When a disease turns all of humanity into the living dead, the last man on Earth becomes a reluctant vampire hunter. Vincent Price and Franca Batoya. Man's Favorite Sport. The author of a best-selling fishing guide is actually extremely inexperienced in the sport, which causes mayhem when he is entered into a competition. Rock Hudson and Paula Prentice. Marnie. Mark marries Marnie, although she is a habitual thief and has serious psychological problems, and tries to help her confront and resolve them. Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery. Mary Poppins. In turn of the century London, a magical nanny employs music and adventure to help two neglected children become closer to their father. Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. McHale's Navy. The crazy crew of McHale decides to use their PT boat as an off-track betting parlor and run into lots of trouble when they owe money to some Marines and a horse they bought caused a Japanese sub to run aground. Muscle Beach Party. Local beachgoers find that their beach has been taken over by the businessmen training a stable of bodybuilders. Frankie Avalon and Annette Bonicello. Muscle Beach Party. My Fair Lady. In 1910's London, snobbish phonetics professor Henry Higgins agrees to a wager that he can make crude flower girl Eliza Doolittle presentable in high society. Nightmare. The nights of a young private school student, Janet, are troubled by horrible dreams in which her mother, who is actually locked up in a mental institution, haunts her. David Knight and Moria Redmond, Nightmare. The Outrage. Travelers in the 1870s Southwest discuss a recent murder trial in which all the principals told differing stories about the events. The Outrage. Paul Newman and Lawrence Harvey Husband. Pajama Party. Sent to Earth to prepare for an invasion, a Martian scout lands amidst a swim party and tries to convince everyone that he really is who he says. Tommy Kirk and Annette Funicello. Paris When It Sizzles. The sprightly young assistant of a Hollywood screenwriter helps him over his writer's block by acting out his fantasies of possible plots. William Holden and Audrey Hepburn. Paris When It Sizzles. The Pawnbroker. A Jewish pawnbroker, victim of Nazi persecution, loses all faith in his fellow man until he realizes too late the tragedy of his actions. Rod Steiger and Geraldine Fitzgerald. The Pleasure Seekers. Three American lovelies rooming together in Madrid all manage to get themselves into seemingly unhappy relationships with fellows. Annette Margaret, Anthony Francois. The Pleasure Seekers. Sex and the Single Girl. A womanizing reporter for a sleazy tabloid magazine impersonates his henpecked neighbor in order to get an expose on renowned psychologist Helen Brown. Ride the Wild Surf. Fabian and Shelley Fabaret are among the 60 stars surfing their way to paradise along the famous beaches on Hawaii's North Shore. Ride the Wild Surf. Robin and the Seven Hoods. In Prohibition-era Chicago, two rival gangs compete for control of the city's rackets. Parody, comedy, crime, and musical. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. Roustabout. After a singer loses his job at a coffee shop, he finds employment at a struggling carnival, but his attempted romance with a teenager leads to friction with her father, Elvis Presley and Barbara Stanwyck. Straitjacket. After 20-year asylum stay for a double axe murder, suspicion arises about Lucy as she returns to daughter Carol. Joan Crawford and Diane Baker, Straitjacket. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. A young reindeer Rudolph lives at the North Pole. His father is son of Santa's reindeer and is expected that Rudolph will eventually be one too. Billy May Richards and Burl Ives. Santa Claus conquers the Martians. The Martians kidnap Santa Claus because there is nobody on Mars to give their children presents. John Call, Vincent Beck. Santa Claus conquers the Martians. Send me no flowers. When a hypochondriac believes he is dying, he makes plans for his wife, which she discovers and misunderstands. Rock Hudson, Doris Day, and Tony Randall, and Paul Lynde. The Wrong Box. In Victorian England, a fortune now depends on which two brothers outlives the other, or can be made to have seemed to do so. John Mills, Michael Caine, and Ralph Richardson. 7 Days in May. United States military leaders plot to overthrow the president because he supports a nuclear disarmament treaty and they fear a Soviet sneak attack. Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. Sex and the College Girl. This early 1960s film depicts the trivial pursuits and relationships of two college-age girls on a weekend vacation to a luxury resort in Puerto Rico. Sex and the College Girl. A Shot in the Dark. Bumbling Inspector Jacques Clouseau falls in love with a murder suspect, Maria Gambrelli, and tries to clear her name. Peter Sellers and Elkie Summer. Surf Party. A young girl travels to California with a couple of friends in order to visit her brother. After they arrive, it doesn't take long for them to get into the swing of things and also attract the attention of the local police. The Fall of the Roman Empire. The death of Marcus Aurelius leads to a succession crisis in which the deceased emperor's son, Commodus, demonstrates that he is unwilling to let anything undermine his claim to the Roman Empire. The Seventh Dawn. Political and personal intrigue surround a group of characters in Malaya after the close of the Second World War. William Holden and Susan York. The Carpetbaggers. Jonas Court is a disagreeable young tycoon who's building planes, directing films, and tattling around on the corporate make in 1930s Hollywood. George Peppard and Alan Ladd. The Moon Spinners. A teenager encounters romance, intrigue, and a search for stolen jewels during her visit to the island of Crete. Haley Mills and Eli Wallach. The Unsinkable Molly Brown. A poor, uneducated mountain girl leaves her cabin in search of respect, a wealthy husband, and a better life in this fictionalized biopic of Margaret Molly Brown. Debbie Reynolds, Harvey Presnell. The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. British archaeologists and their American investor ship in Egyptian mummies sarcophagus to London, but someone has the amulet to revive the mummy, thus killing people. The Disorderly Orderly. Medical student Jerome Littlefield works as an orderly at a private clinic where he creates havoc due to his ineptitude. The Disorderly Orderly. The Naked Kiss. A former prostitute relocates to a buttoned-down suburb, determined to fit in with mainstream society, but perverse secrets simmer beneath the wholesome surface. Those Callaways. A strong-willed family in a small New England town struggles against tremendous odds to realize their dream of establishing a sanctuary for the great flocks of wild geese that migrate overhead. Those Callaways. The Incredible Mr. Limpet. Meek and mild-mannered bookkeeper Henry Limpet has few passions in life. In mid-41, he would love to join the Navy, but has rated 4F. The Incredible Mr. Limpet, featuring Don Knotts and Carol Cook. Top Copy. A con man gets mixed up with a group of thieves who plan to rob an Istanbul museum to steal a jeweled dagger. Top Copy. Day of Anger. A scruffy garbage boy becomes the pupil of a famed gunfighter, and the stage for confrontation is set when the gunman overruns the boy's town through violence and corruption. Lee Van Cleef and Giuliano Hema. Viva Las Vegas. A race car driver preparing for the Grand Prix whiles his time in Las Vegas working as a waiter to pay for his new engine, and soon strikes up a romance with a beautiful young woman. What a way to go. Four-time widow Louisa sees a psychologist to discuss her marriages, in which her husband's humble business Edgar, blasé millionaire Rod, bohemian painter Larry, got rich and died due to greed. Don't make waves. Carlo goes on a vacation to Southern California, where he quickly becomes immersed in the easygoing local culture. Don't make waves. Tony Curtis and Claudia Cardinal. Where Love Has Gone. A divorced couple's teenage daughter stands trial for stabbing her mother's latest lover. Betty Davis, Susan Hayward, and Mike Connors. Where Love Has Gone. Woman of Straw. Tyrannical but ailing tycoon Charles Richmond becomes very fond of his attractive Italian nurse, Maria. Gina Lola Brigida, Sean Connery, and Ralph Richardson. Woman of Straw. The World of Henry Orient. A mischievous, adventuresome 14-year-old girl and her best friend begin following an eccentric concert pianist around New York City after she develops a crush. Peter Sellers and Tippy Walker. Zorba the Greek. An uptight English writer traveling to Crete on a matter of business finds his life changed forever when he meets the gregarious Alexis Zorba. Zulu. Outnumbered British soldiers do battle with Zulu warriors at Rorke's Drift. Stanley Baker, Jack Hawkins, and Ulla Jacobson. Zulu. Those were the top films, the best films of 1964. Obviously, we had some crime, drama, romance, biographies. We had some thriller, mystery. We had some horror films. What do you think about teenage films? What do you think about all the films that were released in the year 1964? obvious it's not all inclusive, but pretty much I have all the movies of 1964. Let me know if there's any movies that I missed that were not on this list. Now, obviously, you can probably find tons of foreign movies, which we're not utilizing too much here for the sake of Hollywood, USA, and we're not doing best of foreign films. We're doing the best films in the USA that were released in 1964. All right, you have any questions, comments, and feedback, leave them below. Those were the best films that were released in 64. Stick around for the best films of 1965 coming soon. Thanks everyone, thanks for watching Yesteryear TV. I'm Tony, and I'll see you all in the next video.